How's it going, guys? Midnight Strike here, back for another review, and this time we're going to be taking a look at a game that I actually missed out on reviewing back when it came out in early 2012. That game, of course, is a part of my favorite fighting game series, the Soul series, and this is SoulCalibur V. Now, at the time that I'm reviewing it, this is the most recent SoulCalibur game, and I've got my PlayStation 3 copy right here. I have every single SoulCalibur game, including Soul Blade for the PlayStation 1. Found that little beauty, found that gem on eBay for like $7 or so. Good game, awesome game, and leading up to this game was actually supposed to be Soul Blade 2, which is a really interesting developmental twist because I can see a lot of similarities to it. Of course, I played SoulCalibur V first, but going back and actually playing Soul Blade, I can see a lot of the similarities, much like the limited blocking ability. You can't block too much. You can't go on the defense and be cheap, because then, of course, people will try to spam you. So there's a lot of unique aspects about this fighter that weren't really as in-depth or explored as much in, say, 3 or 4, or even 2 or the first one. So a lot of the returning characters come back as well in different forms, like the fighting stance of, say, Keelik returns, albeit in a different form, under the character named Jiba. So there are a lot of different things, and that's one of the actual complaints that I have, though, is why not bring back the characters and invent new fighting stances? At least they actually have a good create a character mode that lets you create these characters, these past characters, almost exact in their entirety. For the most part, I like some of the character redesigns, and they work around all of the different technical aspects flawlessly. The graphics are improved from its predecessor, and they definitely put an emphasis on making the combat feel a little bit more fluid than the last release. The thing that I really hated about SoulCalibur 4 was that the fighting didn't feel natural. It didn't feel fast enough. It wasn't fluid. It felt disjointed, really cumbersome, and just kind of slow, much like a lot of things did on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 back in those days, before at least 2009, from what I've noticed. So, you know, SoulCalibur 4 wasn't really an exception. I just kind of bought it to have every game, to say I have every game. So, you know, I still play it from time to time, but I do enjoy the 5th one a little bit better. Albeit there are a lot more modes on the 4th one. But this game, this little beauty right here, has a lot of them as well. Now, there is a story mode with cutscenes, which is a little bit unique for this game, and it actually features a new protagonist named Patroklos, as Siegfried isn't exactly the center of attention anymore. I do like that they actually included him still, but they actually made him a little bit more realistic instead of the anime-ish appeal that he had in previous games. So they gave him a little bit of a makeover. He looks a little bit more like Aomer instead of a long-haired Ken doll, so it looks a little different. So it's a little bit different and takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you get past all of the aesthetics, the movesets are practically the same, to be honest, except for Siegfried doesn't have his armor breaker technique, and I should know, Siegfried's my main. What I really like about this game is its intriguingly in-depth character creation mode. I see a bunch of videos on YouTube and the like, just exploring the different technicalities and everything that you can do, all the infinite possibilities of this create a character mode. And it's really interesting, and I should probably point out that the further you get, the more you level up, the more stuff you get, the more weapons you get, the more clothes you get, the more items you get. You can even change the color of these items, including weapons. So you can have multicolored things, you can have layers on these weapons, you can put decals on them, you can add antlers, you can basically do whatever you want with these characters. It's probably the most in-depth create a character mode I've ever seen. So I've made Dante, I've made Dante, and I just said that. I've made Dante, I've made Rock, I've made the Ken doll anime-ish version of Siegfried, I've made Keelik, Huang, Yuna, Tidus, just a bunch of these characters. Sephiroth, I could even make Cloud Strife. I made Barret, so Final Fantasy characters, of course. Metal Gear Solid, the boss. I made the boss really unique, and it just serves for a greater immersion and greater in-depth kind of who would you pit against these people. Now, another thing that's new to this game is the ability to break armor. This can be either a good thing or a bad thing. And in this case, in most cases actually, it's a good thing. It actually adds a little bit of more depth into it and makes it seem a bit more realistic, especially with the more bulky armor that you can employ. The only thing that I would say though with this is they should have given the ability to turn this feature off, because sometimes it ruins everything that you put on this character. You work so hard to build this character only to get it broken off. So, you know, as far as that goes though, it doesn't really matter in the end because you always begin a new fight. And what I should say about the fights though is they took out the ability to have infinite time on the fights. That's one of the other things that I really have my gripes with, have my kind of animosity towards. I don't see why they couldn't have had infinite timed fights, or just no time limit at all. The highest time limit that you can employ is 60 seconds, and even that runs out pretty fast. Another thing that returns are the super attacks from Soul Blade. They had a little bit charged up. You can do these combo breakers or whatever the heck they are. I'm not sure about the name of them. I'm not sure what they were named in Soul Blade, but they're like these charged attacks where you charge up this meter. You get numbers 1 and 2 and 3. Once you get 3, that's about as high as you can get. You can use them one at a time. Different moves take up a certain number of like meter charges, and you just turn the joystick and then hit R2 in my case. And then that's where you go. You turn the joystick in the direction that the character is facing. So he basically, this attack is an unstoppable attack that if you're not, unless you're blocking at the time of employment, you're gonna get hit. So better watch out. It takes about half of your life bar basically. So it can be spammed, that's the only downside to it, but it does add a lot more depth, much like a lot of the other things. The only thing that I have to say bad about it is probably it can get spammed a lot. That's pretty much the only thing. But as far as the actual characters go, they're pretty good. As far as, like, say, guest characters, that is. Ezio Auditore from Assassin's Creed Brotherhood actually makes an appearance. You know, SoulCalibur, if they were really famous for one thing, it was their guest characters. And ever since, even with the first one, with Yoshimitsu, who was originally in Tekken, they've employed a number of guest characters, especially starting with the second one, where you could play as Spawn, Heihachi, who has gone on to be in many fighting games, including PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, and Link. And Link is probably one of the most popular ones out of those three. I have the PlayStation 2 version, of course, so I'm stuck with Heihachi. So, and then in 3, the characters were sincerely lacking, but then they picked it up a notch with Star Wars characters, which is actually how I found out about the game, in SoulCalibur 4. I saw an advertisement and I was just like, okay, I really have to get this because it has Star Wars characters, and I was really into Star Wars characters back then. I was really into just the entire Star Wars saga as it had just come to a close, so I was into it pretty hardcore back then. So, you know, I had no idea what SoulCalibur was. All I knew is it looked badass, especially from the YouTube clips that I saw. So, getting on to the final verdict, I would probably rate it just, you know, 8.5, 9 out of 10. Just because it's a little bit more stripped down, the plot is a little cheesy and contrived, but once you get past all that stuff, it's really immersive, really fun to just go out and make characters and play with, especially Ezio from Assassin's Creed. That's really fun, especially with all the moves and everything. The fighting is very fluid and very smooth, especially for some of the characters who are a little bit on the slower side, or who would be on the slower side. Moreover, in SoulCalibur 4, it kind of smooths it out a bit. There's still a little bit on the clunky side, but it is very smooth for what it is. So, with that, I'm probably going to rate this game 9 out of 10. I mean, I still enjoy it to this day, but I do like the first one a little bit better, albeit I have it on a 360, so that one is a stripped-down version as well, with no online. So, with that, thank you very much for watching. 9 out of 10. This is Midnight Strike 3625. Keep calm and rock on.